The city was alive with the hum of ambition, cars rushing through avenues lined with glass towers, businessmen clutching briefcases, mothers dragging their children to school, and in the middle of this busy world stood a small family diner, humble and warm, where the smell of fresh coffee and buttered toast filled the air and where people came not only to eat but to feel something genuine, a little touch of home. And in this diner worked Emily, a young woman in her mid-20s with tired eyes. But a kind smile, someone who had grown up without parents, shuffled through foster homes, and learned the hard way that love was not always permanent, yet instead of turning bitter she had chosen to be soft, to give kindness to strangers, to laugh with coworkers, and to dream silently of a family she could one day call her own, though her reality was just long shifts, sore feet, and a tiny rented room she could barely afford. But destiny has a strange way of sneaking into ordinary lives, and on one crisp morning as she refilled cups of coffee and wiped down the counter, the bell above the diner's door jingled and in walked a man who seemed out of place among the humble checkered floors and plastic menus, a man who carried himself with the confidence of someone who had built empires and broken barriers, his tailored suit perfectly pressed, his polished shoes glinting in the light, his jaw sharp, his eyes piercing, his aura powerful enough to silence a room without a word, yet beside this man was a little girl who immediately softened the entire picture, tiny, no older than 6, with curly hair tied up in ribbons and big brown eyes full of innocence and longing, her hand gripping her father's tightly as though he were the only anchor she had in the world, and when they slid into a booth by the window Emily approached with her notepad, flashing her usual warm smile, asking if they'd like the breakfast special or perhaps some pancakes, but before the man could open his mouth, the little girl tilted her head up at Emily and whispered words that made time itself stop. "Can you be my mommy?" she asked, her voice trembling with both hope and fear, and instantly the powerful man in the suit froze, his confident mask cracking as though struck by something he had never prepared for. The entire diner faded in Emily's perception as her eyes locked onto the child's, and in those eyes she saw a world of loneliness, a void that no toys or wealth could fill, and her own heart, empty from years of craving belonging, ached in recognition. The man, who was none other than Alexander Steele, one of the city's most feared and respected CEOs, cleared his throat, embarrassed, mumbling to his daughter Lily to behave, but Lily clutched Emily's apron and repeated more firmly this time, "Please, can you be my mommy?" And suddenly Emily's hands trembled, not because she didn't want to comfort the girl, but because she felt unworthy. Who was she, a waitress barely making rent, to even be considered a mother figure to this precious child? Yet the sincerity in Lily's plea planted a seed in Emily's heart that refused to go away, and though Alexander tried to redirect the conversation by ordering breakfast, his sharp gaze kept drifting back to Emily, conflicted, surprised that his usually shy daughter had spoken so boldly, surprised even more by how gentle Emily was, how she knelt down to Lily's level, smiled softly, and told her that she was a very brave girl, how she gently tucked a loose curl behind the child's ear before standing up again, her kindness so natural it disarmed even the hardened CEO, and as they ate breakfast Lily wouldn't stop chattering to Emily every time she passed their table, asking if she liked dolls, if she had a family, if she could come to her house to play, questions that made Alexander's face tighten with discomfort but made Emily's heart flutter with a mixture of joy and ache, because deep down she longed for exactly this kind of connection. The hours passed and eventually Alexander paid the bill, leaving a tip that was far too generous, his way of perhaps overcompensating for the awkwardness his daughter had caused. But before they left Lily wrapped her little arms around Emily's waist and whispered again, "Please don't forget me," words that followed Emily long after they had gone, echoing in her chest like a forgotten dream. And from that day on everything began to change, for Alexander Steele, the man who built skyscrapers yet couldn't mend his daughter's loneliness, found himself haunted by the image of a waitress whose smile had soothed his child in a way he never could. And for Emily, who had lived her life invisible, suddenly she was seen, truly seen, and she couldn't shake the memory of a little girl's voice begging for a mother, and destiny began weaving their paths together. For Alexander returned to the diner the next morning, under the excuse of grabbing coffee before a meeting, but really to see if his daughter's mommy was there, and Lily squealed in delight when she spotted Emily, tugging her father's hand until they sat in the same booth, and day after day this routine became their quiet ritual, the cold CEO beginning to thaw in the presence of a woman who treated his daughter not as a burden or an accessory but as a soul worthy of love. And slowly Alexander began to notice the details, the way Emily listened when Lily spoke, the way she never rushed her, the way her eyes sparkled with patience and warmth. And though Alexander fought against it, warning himself that he had no time for distractions, no room for entanglements, something deeper was stirring, something he hadn't felt since his late wife had passed years ago. The walls he had built around his heart began to crack, and Emily, too, though she told herself not to dream, couldn't deny the way her heart raced whenever she saw the two of them walk through the diner door, couldn't deny the strange pull that made her wish for something impossible, and as whispers of their growing connection spread among the diner's staff and customers, a storm of fate was brewing, because soon Emily would be faced with choices that would test her courage, Alexander would be forced to confront his fears of vulnerability, and little Lily, with her innocent wish for a mommy, would become the thread binding two broken hearts into something whole, a story not just of love but of healing, sacrifice, and the reminder that sometimes family is not about blood or wealth, but about the simple act of saying yes when a child looks into your eyes and begs for love.